There's a kind of fatigue that coffee can't fix. It's not about how many hours you slept or how much you've eaten. It's deeper than that. It's the quiet weight in your chest when you open your eyes, the fog that doesn't lift, even after a hot shower or a splash of cold water. You're not tired. You're mentally drained. And the worst part is, most people live like this for years without even noticing it. They assume this numb, slow, disconnected state is just part of growing older or being busy. But what if it isn't? What if your mental energy could be reset, naturally, simply, without any pills or caffeine or 10-step routines? Mental energy isn't a resource you lose forever. It's a flame, and like any flame, it dims when neglected, but it reignites when fed the right sparks. That's what this episode is about. Not productivity hacks or hustle culture gimmicks. Just real, small shifts that reconnect your brain to the present moment. Micro movements, sensory jolts, conscious stillness. These are the things that wake the mind. Not noise, not speed, but intentional contrast. We're going to explore 12 subtle ways to revive your inner alertness without relying on caffeine. Things you can do anytime, anywhere, when your brain starts to feel heavy or slow. And each one, if practiced with presence, has the power to bring you back to yourself. So before you reach for another cup or scroll through more motivation quotes, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, what if you already had the tools to wake up your mind and you just forgot how to use them? 1. Splash color into your workspace. Have you ever walked into a room and felt instantly more alive without knowing why? Sometimes it's not the people or the temperature or the sound. It's the color. A single streak of vibrant blue, a sharp burst of yellow, or even a fiery red sticky note on your desk can do more for your mind than another hour of sleep. Because your brain craves contrast. It's wired to respond to novelty, to brightness, to sudden stimulation. And color, especially when placed intentionally in your space, is a direct line to your attention system. It wakes you up without saying a word. But the key here isn't to repaint your entire room or go out and buy expensive art. It's about simple intervention. Add a colorful object where your eyes naturally fall, a notebook in a neon shade, a photo frame in cobalt blue, a plant with sharp green leaves in a red pot. These small touches don't just decorate, they activate. You're creating tiny signals that tell your brain, hey, pay attention, something's new here. And that alertness, even if it's subtle, begins to cut through the fog. You start to notice more, think faster, feel more connected to your environment. Many of us spend our days surrounded by dull grays, faded whites, and digital screens. That sensory blandness numbs the mind over time. Without variation, without contrast, our brains go into idle mode. We become less curious, less motivated, less present. So when you splash color into your workspace, you're not just decorating, you're rewiring. You're injecting your environment with life, and your mind follows. There's a reason artists, designers, and even surgeons often choose bold color in their workspaces. It's not just aesthetic, it's energetic. And you don't need a creative job to benefit from that. You just need intention. Ask yourself, what colors make me feel alert? What combinations surprise me? What shade brings out the sharpest version of me? Your workspace doesn't have to look like a magazine spread, but it should spark something inside you. Because when your environment pulses with subtle life, so does your thinking. The goal isn't stimulation overload, it's precision. A pop of orange against a clean wall, a bold post-it next to your muted keyboard. These things aren't trivial, they're tools. Tools that remind you, gently, powerfully, that you are still here, still awake, still capable of lighting up the day from the inside out. 2. Change the scent in your room. Scent is memory, scent is emotion, and more than anything else, scent is presence. We underestimate it because it works silently, but your brain doesn't. It's constantly scanning the air for cues. Is this environment safe, familiar, stimulating? And when that scent stays the same for too long, when the air becomes predictable, your brain slowly begins to tune out. That's why walking into a space with a new smell can jolt you into clarity. It's a direct signal to your nervous system, something's changed. Pay attention. Imagine the crisp sting of peppermint as it hits your nose, or the grounding calm of eucalyptus filling the room. These aren't just pleasant, they're neurological resets. Studies have shown that certain essential oils can increase alertness, reduce fatigue, and even enhance cognitive performance. But this isn't about becoming obsessed with aromatherapy. It's about using novelty in a mindful way, about realizing that your mental energy isn't just trapped in your thoughts, it's tied to your senses. And when you change what your senses are experiencing, you change the state of your mind. But let's get practical. You don't need a diffuser or fancy oils. Open a window in the morning and let unfamiliar air rush in. Boil a slice of citrus or a stick of cinnamon. Spray a bit of cologne you never wear onto a nearby towel. Even lighting a match for no reason and smelling the sulfur just once can interrupt the routine long enough to wake your brain up. You're not doing this to relax. You're doing this to spark awareness. A new scent tells your mind, this moment is different. This moment is alive. And here's where the power lies. When you consciously change the scent in your space, you are training your brain to pay closer attention. You become more aware of what you're doing, how you're feeling, what needs to shift. It's a tiny act of sensory leadership, and over time, it teaches you to become more sensitive to the invisible forces that influence your mind. You'll start to notice when things feel flat. You'll instinctively reach for something to reawaken yourself before the fog settles in. In Stoic philosophy, we're reminded to return to the present often, to not let the days pass us by in a haze. Changing the scent is a way to do that. It's a ritual, a quiet rebellion against stagnation, because when the air around you feels new, your thoughts begin to feel new too. And that's the point. You're not just refreshing a room, you're refreshing your mind. 3. Set a no-input hour. We live in a world where silence has become suspicious. If there's no music, no notifications, no podcast playing in the background, something feels off. We've trained ourselves to fill every moment with noise, every pause with input. And yet, we wonder why we feel so mentally exhausted by midday. It's not that we're doing too much, it's that we're processing too much. Constant input burns through your mental energy, even if it feels passive. Your brain doesn't know the difference between a to-do list and a playlist. It processes both. It filters, sorts, reacts. And that process drains your clarity drop by drop. That's why one of the most powerful ways to reset your mental energy is deceptively simple. Stop absorbing, just for an hour. 1 hour a day of intentional silence. No scrolling, no talking, no background noise, no screens. Just stillness. It sounds easy, but for most people it's one of the hardest things to do. Not because it's boring, but because silence reveals what the noise was hiding: your thoughts, your emotions, your real state of mind. At first, that hour might feel uncomfortable. You might reach for your phone out of habit. You might feel restless or even anxious. That's normal. It's the residue of overstimulation being cleared out. You're not losing energy, you're reclaiming it, because in silence, your brain finally gets to stop reacting and start recovering. Neural circuits begin to recharge. Background processes can complete. Your mind begins to consolidate instead of constantly consuming. This is mental digestion. And just like your body, your mind needs time to process what it takes in. Without that, everything becomes noise. You can sit quietly in a chair. You can walk around your block without headphones. You can stare at the ceiling, or a tree, or a candle. You don't have to meditate. You just have to stop consuming for a while. That's it. And in that stillness, something strange happens. Your own thoughts become clearer. Ideas resurface. Emotions settle. Decisions become easier. Not because you've added something new, but because you've taken something away. That's the paradox of mental energy. Sometimes, more clarity comes not from doing, but from undoing. And here's what's truly powerful. Once you build the habit of this no-input hour, your relationship with noise changes. You begin to crave silence, not out of fatigue, but out of strength. You stop being afraid of your own mind. You realize that you don't need constant stimulation to feel alive. You just need space. Space to hear yourself, to reset, to think again. Because in that quiet hour, you're not just giving your brain a break. You're giving your life a rhythm, one where your energy isn't dictated by what's pouring in, but by what's rising up from within. 4. Reorganize one small item in your space. It might sound trivial, moving a book, shifting a pen, rotating the chair a few degrees. But the brain doesn't respond only to grand changes. In fact, it thrives on small, intentional shifts. Reorganizing one small item in your space is more than tidying. It's a way of signaling to your mind that something new is happening. And newness, even in its simplest form, wakes us up. You see, our environments become invisible to us over time. We stop noticing the placement of things, the way the desk feels, the corner that collects dust. This familiarity breeds mental dullness, not because the space is bad, but because it's static. The brain, when faced with the same patterns every day, downshifts into autopilot, and autopilot is the enemy of mental energy. But when you move just one thing, a cup, a photo, a notebook, you disrupt that pattern. You tell your brain, pay attention. Something's different here. That subtle alertness can ripple through your entire mental state. You don't have to do a full declutter. This isn't about productivity or minimalism, it's about attention. Reorganizing one small item is a micro-act of agency. You are asserting control, creating variation, sparking new associations. You're reminding yourself, visually and physically, that you're not stuck. Things can move, even you. Think about how it feels to return to a freshly made bed, or to place your keys in a new spot. That moment of slight disorientation, that's your brain rewiring, that's your awareness returning. And over time, this builds what the Stoics would call active presence, the ability to remain awake to your own life, even in its quietest corners. And there's another layer to this. When you change your environment, even subtly, you often change your thoughts. A pen placed where it wasn't yesterday might remind you of a task, a goal, an idea. A book turned sideways might invite curiosity. Our minds are deeply responsive to our surroundings, so instead of waiting for inspiration to strike, create it. Gently, playfully, without pressure. Try it now. Look around your space. What's one thing you can shift, just slightly, to wake your brain up? It doesn't have to be dramatic. In fact, the beauty lies in the fact that it isn't. Because when you realize how easily your mind responds to small signals, you stop waiting for big changes to feel better. You start making them quietly, consistently, and with purpose. 5. Use an ice cube on your wrists. It sounds strange, even a little extreme, but the moment that cold touches your skin, your brain snaps into the now, not later, not someday. Now that's the power of cold. It bypasses thought, skips past hesitation, and jolts your nervous system into full awareness. Holding an ice cube against your wrists for just 10 or 15 seconds is a simple physiological trick to reset your mental energy, because it taps directly into your body's built-in alert systems. Here's what happens. The cold shock triggers your sympathetic nervous system, what we often call the fight or flight response. But you're not in danger. You're just giving your brain a clear, sharp signal that something immediate is happening. This sudden input boosts circulation, speeds up heart rate slightly, and increases your focus, even if just for a few minutes. It's not about staying cold, it's about waking up. Because sometimes when your thoughts feel foggy and heavy, what you really need isn't motivation, it's sensation. Most people rely on stimulants like caffeine to create this feeling, but caffeine doesn't reset, it masks, and it builds dependence. Cold, on the other hand, is honest. You feel it instantly. You can't ignore it. And the beauty is, you don't need a cryotherapy session or a cold plunge, just a simple ice cube at your desk during a mental slump. It's a reset button, no words required. But this isn't just about tricking your biology, it's also a practice in presence. When you do something unusual, something mildly uncomfortable, you break the rhythm of numbness. You become aware of your body, of the moment, of yourself. And from that awareness, clarity rises. The cold doesn't solve your to-do list, but it can pull you out of the haze long enough to see it differently. And there's a quiet discipline in this too, the willingness to do something small but uncomfortable in service of your energy, to not wait until you feel ready, to not rely on external motivation, but to choose action that disrupts passivity. The Stoics spoke often of voluntary discomfort, not as punishment, but as a path to presence. This is a modern version of that, gentle, quick, and deeply effective. So next time your mind feels heavy, your thoughts scattered, your energy flat, pause, go to the freezer, hold a piece of ice against your wrist, breathe, feel it. Let your body remind your brain, you're here, you're alive, and you have more control over your mental energy than you think. 6. Give a compliment to a stranger. Mental energy isn't just about what's happening inside your brain. It's about how you engage with the world around you. And one of the fastest, most underestimated ways to spark your own alertness is through kindness. Not the kind you plan or post about, the spontaneous kind, the kind that surprises even you, like telling a stranger that you love their jacket, that their energy feels calm, that their words helped. These small moments of unexpected connection carry a charge. They wake you up emotionally. They remind you that you're not just a mind stuck in thought. You're a human being, in motion, in relation to others. Why does this work? Because compliments pull us out of our heads. They shift our focus from internal loops, worry, fatigue, self-doubt, into the present moment. To offer a compliment, you must observe. You must notice. And that act of noticing, however brief, is a form of mindfulness. You become aware of someone else. You tune in. You find something good. And in doing that, you interrupt the default setting of judgment and disconnection that often drains your mental state. But it goes deeper. There's neuroscience behind it. When you give a genuine compliment, your brain releases dopamine, not only because you're doing something kind, but because you're making social contact that affirms safety and connection. These are ancient signals your nervous system recognizes. In a world full of tension and speed, pausing to recognize beauty or effort in someone else isn't just noble, it's medicinal. It lowers stress, it lifts mood, and it re-engages parts of the brain tied to empathy, attention, and reward. Now, this doesn't mean you force it. You don't compliment to be polite or to manipulate an outcome. You do it because it's real. You look at someone and let the good thought become a spoken one. That's it. Maybe it's the way someone helped another person in line. Maybe it's the color of their scarf. Maybe it's their posture, their calm tone, their quiet strength. There's always something, and the moment you speak it, energy shifts. Not just for them, but for you. Kindness is often seen as something soft, but in practice, it's a sharp tool. It cuts through apathy. It wakes up the part of you that still believes in human warmth, and that warmth fuels clarity. Because when you're connected, you're alive. Your thoughts flow more freely. Your heart pumps more fully. You stop thinking about how tired you are and start remembering that you're still in this life, participating, not just observing. So if your brain feels dull, try this. Look up, look around, find something honest and kind to say. It doesn't have to be profound. It just has to be real. One sentence, one smile, one spark, and that might be all it takes to reset the entire rhythm of your day. 7. Set a 15-minute speed focus challenge. There's something powerful about a ticking clock. It cuts through hesitation. It clears the fog of indecision. It brings urgency, not the kind that overwhelms, but the kind that sharpens. That's what the 15-minute speed focus challenge is all about. It's not about finishing something massive. It's about waking your mind up through intensity. Pick one task, something you've been putting off, something that doesn't require perfection. Set a timer for 15 minutes, then go. No distractions, no overthinking, just full immersion. What happens next is fascinating. As soon as you commit to that short burst of effort, your brain begins to shift. Your attention narrows. Your inner critic goes quiet, because there's no time for debate. You've created a container for action, and that's often all we need. Not motivation, not ideal conditions, just a boundary, a frame, a moment where action becomes the only thing that matters. This technique taps into what psychologists call the urgency effect. The closer a deadline is, the more your brain pushes out unnecessary thoughts. You begin to prioritize, you instinctively block out noise, and even though it's self-imposed, the timer adds pressure in the best way. It tricks your mind into showing up, fully, focused. And here's the magic. Once you start, momentum builds. The hardest part of most tasks isn't the doing, it's the starting. 15 minutes bypasses the resistance and makes starting feel doable. And once you're in it, you often keep going long after the timer ends. But even if you don't, you've already won, because what you've done is reintroduce your brain to movement. You've proven that clarity doesn't require hours, it can be accessed in minutes. And when you repeat this challenge daily, something changes. You stop fearing work. You stop needing long blocks of time. You begin to trust your ability to generate energy on command. This isn't a life hack. It's a shift in mindset, a return to discipline, not the rigid kind, but the empowering kind. The kind that reminds you that your focus is a muscle, and like any muscle, it gets stronger through use. You're not waiting for the mood, you're setting the tempo. And that agency, that choice, is energizing. So the next time you feel scattered, lazy, or unmotivated, don't fight the whole day. Don't try to fix everything. Just choose one thing, set your timer, and let the countdown pull you back into presence. Because sometimes 15 minutes of pure focus is all it takes to remember who you are and what you're capable of. 8. Listen to a language you don't understand. It might sound odd, even counterintuitive. How can listening to something you can't comprehend actually sharpen your mind? But that's exactly the point. When you hear a language you don't understand, your brain can't rely on autopilot. It can't zone out. It can't fill in the blanks with meaning or context. So instead, it listens differently, more attentively, more curiously. It begins scanning for rhythm, tone, pattern, emotion. And that process alone is enough to spark dormant circuits in your mind. Because novelty, especially sensory novelty, is deeply energizing. You see, most of our daily input is familiar, our native language, the same voices, the same tone of media, even the same vocabulary. And while familiarity is comfortable, it rarely wakes us up. When you introduce a new language into your environment, French, Japanese, Arabic, Icelandic, it doesn't matter. You introduce a kind of mental friction. The mind leans in. It becomes a student again, not to learn, but to listen. And that act of unfamiliar listening pulls you out of cognitive laziness and into subtle alertness. Think about how often we let sound become background noise. Music while we work, a podcast while we clean, people talking around us. But when the brain doesn't understand the words, it doesn't tune out. It tunes in. It tries to make sense of patterns, cadences, breaths. And in doing so, it exercises parts of your attention that often lie dormant. This isn't about learning a new language. It's about triggering mental presence through novelty. But there's also something beautifully humbling in this practice. You're reminded that your mind is capable of curiosity, even without comprehension. That attention doesn't need meaning to be alive. And in a world obsessed with productivity, returning to pure attention, for its own sake, is powerful. It trains the brain to stay awake to subtlety, to tune into things not because they're useful, but because they're different. And that's a deep kind of energy. Not frantic, not caffeinated, just aware. So the next time you feel your mind going dull, try this. Play a song in a foreign language. Listen to a radio station from another country. Watch a short video with no subtitles. And don't try to figure it out. Just listen. Let your mind stretch in new directions. Let the strangeness of it sharpen you. Because mental energy isn't just about speed or intensity, it's about variation, and sometimes what your brain needs most isn't more information, but a different frequency altogether. 8. Listen to a language you don't understand. Your brain is a pattern detector. Every second it scans your environment for meaning, familiar sounds, familiar phrases, familiar rhythms. And that's exactly why you start tuning out. The more familiar your auditory environment becomes, the less your brain engages with it. You stop noticing what you're hearing. It becomes background noise. But when you introduce a language you don't understand, something completely outside your cognitive routine, you force your brain to wake up. You give it a mystery, and that mystery becomes energy. Let's say you play a podcast in Hungarian. You don't speak Hungarian. You don't know the grammar or the vocabulary or even how sentences are structured. But the moment that foreign language enters your ears, your brain can't relax into its usual scripts. It leans forward. It listens more actively. Not to understand the words, but to find some kind of pattern. Your brain starts analyzing tone, inflection, rhythm. It becomes more alert, not because it's working harder, but because it's navigating the unknown. This moment of confusion isn't frustrating, it's clarifying, because suddenly you're not daydreaming, you're not stuck in your usual thoughts. You're paying attention, deeply, curiously, silently, and that's the key. Listening to a language you don't understand disrupts mental autopilot. It's like throwing cold water on your cognitive fatigue. You jolt into the now. And there's something almost meditative about it. You're not expected to respond. You're not analyzing the content. You're simply present with sound. You stop needing to decode everything and start observing with fresh ears. This is powerful, especially in a culture obsessed with understanding and control. Letting go of comprehension allows your brain to operate from a more primal, intuitive place. And in that place, before meaning, before words, awareness becomes sharper. There's also an emotional element at play. Foreign languages trigger curiosity. They awaken wonder. They remind you that there's a world beyond your internal monologue, that people live, think, and express themselves in ways you've never encountered. That reminder, no matter how brief, can lift you out of mental stagnation and into presence. Because novelty isn't just about excitement, it's about connection to reality, and few things reawaken reality like hearing something completely unfamiliar. To make this practical, you don't need a plan. Just open YouTube or Spotify and type in a language you've never explored. Choose a song, a short video, a radio segment. No subtitles, no context, just raw sound. Sit with it. Let your brain stretch and play, and notice what happens. You might find yourself breathing more deeply, or focusing more easily, or simply feeling awake again. Because when the mind hears something it doesn't understand, it stops pretending to know. And in that humility, energy is born, attention is reborn, and for a few minutes, you remember what it feels like to truly listen. 9. Tap your fingers in a complex pattern. It might seem like nothing, just your fingers tapping a rhythm on the table. But what feels like a random habit is actually a doorway to mental energy, if done with purpose. When you tap your fingers in a complex, unfamiliar pattern, you're doing something most of us haven't done since childhood, activating coordination between mind and body in real time. And that's powerful, because mental energy isn't just about thoughts, it's about movement, timing, sequence. When your brain is forced to direct a small, precise physical action, it comes alive again. Think about how you feel when you're mindlessly scrolling versus how you feel when you're drumming your fingers to a beat you just made up. One is passive, the other is alert. That's because rhythm is structure. It pulls you out of chaos and into order, even if it's playful. And the best part, you don't need an instrument. Your body is the instrument. Start with your index finger, then ring finger, then pinky. Reverse. Double tap the middle. Add the thumb. It doesn't have to be musical. It just has to be complex enough that you have to concentrate. The moment it challenges you, even slightly, you've created a spark. That spark is neural activation. Neuroscientists call this bilateral stimulation. You're engaging both sides of the brain, forcing coordination, firing off connections between motor control and short-term memory. And even if it lasts only 30 seconds, the effect is real. You feel sharper, clearer, more grounded in your body, because you're not just thinking, you're doing. And that shift from mental drift to intentional action breaks the fog in a way most mental tricks can't. There's also something very human about rhythm. It brings you back to your center. From Stoic journaling to martial arts to ancient rituals, Rhythm has always been used to train focus. Tapping your fingers isn't about becoming a drummer. It's about using your physical body to remind your brain that it's still agile, still capable of complexity, still awake. If you want to take this deeper, challenge yourself. Make up a pattern, memorize it, and repeat it 3 times a day. Notice when your brain stumbles. Notice when it smooths out. What you're doing is teaching your mind to track detail, stay present, and respond in real time, all while seated at your desk or waiting in line or lost in thought. It's mindfulness, disguised as movement. So next time your head feels heavy and your thoughts feel slow, don't just reach for more input. Use your own hands. Start tapping, add rhythm, make it weird, make it yours, and let your nervous system reawaken through play. 10. Stand in sunlight and recite 1 line of poetry. It's simple, almost too simple, but there's something ancient in this act. Stepping into the light, lifting your face toward it, and speaking a single, beautiful line out loud. Not a paragraph, not a performance. Just 1 sentence that holds weight, 1 sentence that reminds your mind of meaning. This isn't about being poetic. It's about interrupting the mechanical rhythm of your day with something alive, with sunlight, with language, with presence. The human brain is deeply responsive to light. We evolved under the sun. Our mood, our clarity, even our hormone cycles are tied to it. Just 2 minutes in direct sunlight, especially early in the day, can reset your circadian rhythm, elevate dopamine levels, and boost focus. But this isn't just about biology. It's about ritual, about deliberately stepping out of the blur and into a moment of deliberate awareness. And when you combine that physical light with verbal beauty, something shifts inside. Why poetry? Because a well-written line collapses complexity into clarity. It delivers meaning without effort. It stirs something emotional, even if you don't fully understand it. And when you speak it aloud, under the sky, not under a ceiling, it lands differently. It's not an idea anymore. It's a vibration, a sound, a message passing through you. And that creates a unique kind of energy. Not frantic, but focused. Not aggressive, but alert. Here's what this might look like. You step outside. The sun is warming your skin. You pause, breathe, and speak. Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? You don't analyze it. You just let the words hang in the air. And in that pause, the fog lifts. Your thoughts slow down. You remember that life is still happening, that this moment is not routine, that you are not just going through motions. You're capable of beauty, of intention, of thought. This act might take less than 60 seconds, but if you do it consistently, it begins to rewire your mornings. You don't wake up dreading the day. You wake up stepping into light, holding words that matter. That changes something deep. Because your energy is no longer reactive, it's chosen. And here's the truth. You don't need to be a poet to feel the effect of poetry. You just need to find a line that touches something inside you. From Rumi to Mary Oliver to a favorite lyric, it doesn't matter where it comes from. What matters is that it's spoken with intention, in the presence of sunlight, as a way to reintroduce yourself to the day. So tomorrow morning, or whenever the weight sets in, step outside. Find the light, find a line, speak it, and let both sun and language do what caffeine never could, bring you fully back to life. 11. Use a new word in a sentence. Mental energy often feels like something grand, like a wave you have to catch or a mountain you have to climb. But sometimes it's sparked by something incredibly small, a single word, a word you've never used before. a word that forces your mind to stretch, even if just slightly. Using a new word in a sentence may sound like something out of a vocabulary workbook, but in reality, it's a subtle but powerful way to jolt your brain into awareness. Because language isn't just how we communicate, it's how we think. And when you change your words, you nudge your thoughts into new directions. The brain is a creature of habit. It clings to familiar words, phrases, and patterns because they're efficient. But that efficiency often leads to dullness. You say the same things. You describe your feelings the same way. You narrate your world with recycled language. And when the language becomes repetitive, so does the experience of life. That's where the power of a new word enters. It adds flavor, dimension, detail. It expands not just your vocabulary but your consciousness. Let's say you come across the word liminal. You've heard it before, maybe. But have you ever used it, spoken it aloud, described your current phase of life as liminal, the space between what was and what will be? Suddenly, your vague sense of transition has a form, a shape, a word. And with that word, your mind sharpens. It has something new to hold on to, something precise. And this isn't about being intellectual, it's about being awake. Awake to nuance, awake to expression, awake to the subtle shades of your own experience. One word can do that. It can turn a dull moment into a fresh realization, a foggy feeling into a sentence that makes sense. It's not the complexity of the word that matters. It's the newness, the disruption, the invitation to use your mind in a slightly different way than you did yesterday. Try this. Each morning or afternoon, pick a single word you don't normally use. It can be something elegant, like ephemeral, or something playful, like bamboozled. Read the definition, say it out loud, then use it in conversation, in a journal, in your thoughts. The act of applying that word forces your brain to construct something new. That construction, that creative effort, is what wakes you up. Even better, it builds momentum. You start looking for better ways to describe your day. You begin noticing details you'd otherwise skip. And slowly, without forcing it, you become someone who sees more, feels more, expresses more. Not because you became smarter overnight, but because you chose to engage your mind instead of drifting through routine. And that's the point. Mental energy doesn't always require movement or stimulation. Sometimes it just requires precision, a deliberate shift in the way you think, speak, and describe. A fresh word to spark a fresh awareness. 12. Revisit a childhood memory on purpose. There's a certain clarity hidden in the past, not in nostalgia, but in memory. When you consciously revisit a childhood moment, you activate parts of the brain tied not just to emotion and memory, but to perspective and meaning. And more importantly, you reignite curiosity. Recalling a specific childhood memory isn't about dwelling on what's gone. It's about reconnecting with a part of yourself that was awake, imaginative, and alive before the weight of adult routines dulled your senses. Think of a moment, not just a vague blur, but something concrete. The sound of a bike wheel spinning, the light that came through your bedroom curtains, the way the sidewalk felt under your feet on the way to school. Bring it back in detail. Where were you? What were you wearing? What were you feeling before you even had the words to explain it? When you do this, something shifts. The memory isn't just a story, it becomes an experience. Your brain doesn't just recall it, it relives it. And in that reliving, neural activity rises, emotional energy rises, and mental clarity returns, like dust being cleared off a mirror. Why does this work? Because childhood memories are stored differently than recent ones. They're tied to identity, to wonder, to the formation of meaning. When you revisit them intentionally, you reactivate early emotional pathways, ones not yet hardened by cynicism or fatigue. It's like watering the roots of a plant long forgotten. The moment comes alive, and so do you. But this isn't about escaping the present. It's about remembering the parts of you that are still here, waiting, the part that got excited over simple things, the part that questioned everything, the part that noticed beauty in the most ordinary places. That child still exists inside you, and when you choose to sit quietly with an old photo, an old song, or even just a mental snapshot of your backyard swing, you give that child space to speak again. And their voice is energy, pure, undiluted energy. You don't need to spend hours on this, just a few minutes a day. Pull up an old sound, like a cartoon jingle or a school bell, or look at something from that time. Let the image sink in. Let the emotion surface. Don't analyze it, just feel it. Then bring that clarity back into your day. You'll be surprised how differently the world looks after reconnecting with the eyes that once saw it for the first time. Because the brain doesn't only feed on newness, it feeds on meaning, and childhood, with all its vivid moments, holds some of the richest, most energizing meaning you've ever stored. You just have to remember where you left it. Not to stay there, but to remind yourself what it felt like to be fully alive. We chase energy like it's something we have to earn. We drink it. We schedule it. We search for the perfect system to unlock it. But the truth is, mental energy isn't hidden in some distant breakthrough. It's already within you, quiet, dormant, waiting for the right signal. And sometimes all it takes is a splash of color, a breath of new air, a line of poetry, a moment of silence. Energy doesn't have to be forced. It can be invited, gently, intentionally, through small acts that reconnect you with your senses, your attention, your presence. If there's one thread that ties all 12 of these tools together, it's this: contrast, breaking routine, disrupting automatic patterns. When you give your brain something unexpected, you wake it up, not with noise, but with precision. You remember what it feels like to be fully here, not distracted, not numb, but alive in the moment. These aren't hacks. They're invitations, tiny rituals that remind your nervous system that it can still shift, that you can still shift. You don't need caffeine to feel awake. You need contact with the world, with yourself, with the present. And that contact happens when you stop waiting for energy and start creating conditions where it naturally rises. So tomorrow morning, don't ask what you need to consume to get through the day. Ask, what can I change, notice, or move, even slightly, that would help me feel awake again? And if today already feels heavy, pause. Pick one of these, just one. Try it fully, without distraction. Not to check it off, but to feel it. Let it work. Then watch what happens next. Because sometimes one small shift is all it takes to remember. Your mind isn't broken. It's just waiting for you to meet it where it is.